Thank you for joining us here at Brain Minutes. Please like, subscribe, and enjoy. The main objective of women's suffrage movement in the U.S. was to demand women's rights in voting. Following the global exclusion of women from voting rights and the agitation by slavery, activist women leaders, among them Lucretia, rationalized the anti-slavery movement through her charismatic public speeches. Later, she was joined by Katie, and both agreed to expand their campaign bases to women's rights to vote. The first convention to strategize the movement activity convened at Seneca Falls, which was the hometown of Stanton Elizabeth, one of the founder members of the movement. The outcome of this meeting was a declaration that called for women voting rights, equality for women's employment opportunities, and promotion of their education. Later, in 1850, a nationwide conventional movement for women followed. The convener of this Massachusetts convention was Lucy Stone and a group of other famous Eastern suffragists. To further emphasize the need for women's voting rights, another convention held in 1852 in New York brought together efforts by Stanton and the dynamic views of Susan B. Anthony, a suffragist leader. United, Elizabeth and Susan led the movement activities in America for a total of 50 years. Though the process was plodding, the movement continued to hold more conventions, leading to increased mass mobilization. However, since women's voting rights could only be extended through constitutional amendments, the mass support was not enough to guarantee the required state support for the movement plan. Following the American Civil War, more attempts to secure women's voting rights were made with little success. Only the Wyoming Territory responded to the pressure and granted women the voting right in all elections in 1869. Motivated by this single achievement, the movement felt the need for a comprehensive national campaign to amend the federal constitution, since it was the only way of achieving the intended voting rights freedom for all women. Motivated by their goal of securing women's rights at the ballot through the federal constitution amendment, the National Women's Suffrage Association was formed in the same year, 1869. The union retained Elizabeth and Susan as its leader, following their proven determination for women's liberation. To strengthen the union activity at the state level, Lucy Stone in 1869 founded another organization called the American Women's Suffrage Association, whose campaigns were limited to fighting for voting rights at the individual state level. However, the two organizations pulled their efforts together. In 1890, they united to form one much stronger union, National American Women's Suffrage Association, under which for almost 30 years they continued with their fight for women's voting rights. From 1890, vigorous complaints followed, persuading the state legislature to accept amendments of their state's voting rights and submit the same for the National Constitution Amendment for full recognition of women in state affairs. The preceding 25 years saw tremendous achievement for the movement activities. Women received recognition in participating in the presidential elections. Specifically, the achievement was state-based, where various states surrendered to the demands of the movement and allowed their women to vote in the local and municipal elections. Following the impact of women in electing Congress members, the new composition in Congress was kind-hearted toward the women's suffrage movement amendments request. By 1918, in 15 states, women had acquired equal voting rights as men. Finally, following the active role of women in World War I, the majority of political parties didn't need much convincing, since women had proven themselves capable and deserved equal rights as men. Therefore, the amendment of women's voting rights passed in 1920 received a 2/3 majority vote and became part of the American Constitution. Thank you for listening to Brain Minutes. This is a channel dedicated to the pursuit of information. The responsibilities of day-to-day life takes up most of our time, so don't waste your time on junk. We recap a host of educational, cultural, or newsworthy events in order to satisfy curiosity and casual learning. Special thank you to Precious Sermon Recaps and Life American Made.